Dear mind, I had you in my sights for a while. I was just waiting for the right moment. I always knew how to get you. I just needed to act at the right time. Get you when you were low, vulnerable. That's always the easiest time to sweep in. I had a fail-safe plan too, a shortcut through your survival response. I'd used it thousands of times before, and it never fails. I knew if I could hijack that, you would be putty in my hands. And you, my love, would never know and never question me. You would trust me implicitly, believing I had your best interests at heart. And I did, sort of. Well, that's what I told you. Without me, your world was unsafe. I was there to protect you, warn you against possible threats. How could that be a bad thing? I wanted, no, needed your attention. And once I had it, I never wanted to let it go. It felt so good watching you fall for me again and again, hanging on my every word, never questioning my opinions, no matter how far-fetched they became. I would test your commitment to me by suggesting things I knew your calm mind would never believe, just to make sure I had your full attention. And you never let me down, my love. You joined me on every crazy journey I invited you on. We felt like a team, you the passenger and me the driver, heading towards my destination of choice. A destination of chaos and doubt, where I never gave you enough time to stop and figure anything out. Where I kept you second guessing every choice you made, and we lived together blissfully in my chaos. People couldn't separate us, we were unified as one. Do you remember that time I told you that if you stood on a stage in front of people, you would probably make a complete fool of yourself? I wasn't specific how, or maybe I was, I can't quite remember now. Maybe I told you you would stumble over your words, and people would snigger at your pathetic weakness. Your inability to speak confidently and calmly would make people think less of you. Who are you to stand on a stage and tell anyone anything? That was a fun one. I enjoyed watching you squirm and panic for days before. You read over your lines again and again. You knew your presentation inside out, and yet you kept coming back to me to check in. Have I done enough, you would ask. But no, I wouldn't make it that easy. If I did that, you would have realised that you didn't need me, and I couldn't face being shunned by you. So I kept the fear alive in ways that meant you could do nothing about it. Ah, but what if? Twisting and turning every time you found what you thought was a solution. I always had a reason why that solution wouldn't work. I was clever. I made sure all the threats I created could not be solved in the here and now because they weren't real. They were hypothetical. But you went to know that, bless your heart. You trusted me. Why would I create a threat that wasn't real? That would just be cruel, right? You needed me as much as I needed you. We were a power couple, totally unbreakable. And the more I pushed, the more isolated you became, relying on me more and more, shutting the world out, that cruel, unsafe world that was so unpredictable. I was the voice of reason. I warned you about potential hazards. I was there to protect you. You knew it would be crazy to ignore me. But then you changed and help arrived. I think I must have pushed you too far because you started to question me, doubt me. I thought I could keep going and you would just stay on board, but I was wrong. You decided to figure out a different way to live, and I felt you slipping away. That was the most horrendous feeling. You broke my heart. I tried to double down on my efforts, and for a while I think it worked, but you just came back again and again, stronger each time, and I realised my power over you was slipping. Who were you listening to now? Whoever it was stole you from me. You didn't hang on my every word, and I could start to feel the separation between us. I felt betrayed. I would have stayed with you forever if you'd only let me. But you always leave in the end. Abandon me for calm, that boring, uneventful place where nothing happens. How dull. Where's the adrenaline that kept you alive in more ways than one? I had you living on the edge of your seat. Surely that was a more exciting way to live. But never mind, my love. There is someone else waiting for me, and they won't let me down like you have. They will never leave me. You keep your calm, uneventful mind, and I'll take my adventure somewhere else. Somewhere where I am wanted, but they haven't figured me out yet, and I'm back in control.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Fran. One of the lines that stuck with me was, "I'm you're the passenger and I'm the driver," and that stuck with me for some reason of anxiety being in control more than ourselves most of the time.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, it is. Once it hijacks us, which is like how I
Yeah,
like to see it, then it has our control. And because it hijacks our survival mechanism, if we think about that, we're designed to listen to that and trust it implicitly. In a split second, in a moment, if there's a threat in front of you, you don't want to be distracted by a sandwich or going, "Is that lion dangerous?" You want to know that you
yeah,
need to react. So we're
yeah,
designed to not question it. So when anxiety hijacks that, we just wholeheartedly like step into it. So when
yeah.
we start to realize, what's a real threat and what's an anxiously created threat, then we can start to separate the two.
And I mean, that's the important thing there, isn't it? It feels like a real threat when we have
Yeah,
anxiety. Every You were talking about being on the stage. It feels like a real threat to life at times.
it really does because it hijacks the survival mechanism. It triggers the same physiological response. So
Yeah,
our body goes into fight or flight, and so our response to that is fight, flight, freeze. So
yeah,
because it's doing that, it feels real in the moment.
mm,
So that's why it's clever because it's hijacking that. We don't know, we can't separate the two out. It's the same physiological. So I
yeah,
always say, think about it a bit like an Xbox. You think that at the physiological response is the Xbox, but then everyone has a different game. And
mhm,
so we're all playing the game. And if we play the game is designed to keep us trapped, to keep us looped in with the
mm,
but, what ifs, and it just digs itself in deeper. So we want to work on the Xbox. We want to work with basically learning how to unplug the Xbox
yeah.
rather than trying to solve the game, which we'll never win.
And it sounded like that started to happen towards the end of that.
So the aim of that letter is the
Yeah,
realization that anxiety realizes that the person that it has hijacked has now started to get help. And that person is starting to understand how to not
mm,
trust it, how to separate, how to question, is
yeah.
that real, and how to learn how to calm themselves down.
How
Yeah.
much of a threat is this actually?
Yeah. How real
Yeah,
is this? Is there
yeah.
anything I can do right now? So yeah.
It's a really powerful message. I've had anxiety in the past, and I'm sure so many people. It's so many people have had anxiety in one way or another. Some to more degrees than others, but it's something that a lot of people will relate with. So it's such a powerful message to send out, and
Thank you.
I love how you've turned it into such a creative art in doing that.
Well, I'd say it's the main thing I've been working with for over a decade. And when I
Yeah,
first started working with it, it caught me too. I didn't know how to understand its twists and turns, how like clever the hooks are, the "you need me's" and working with people over the years. In a way, I've kind of fallen in love with anxiety because it's such a complex, clever little beast. Once you kind of
yeah.
understand it, it's fascinating to see how it attaches to different people in different ways, and then figuring out how to help them unlock their game, their version.
So anxiety is that the main thing you work with in your practice?
I would say so. I mean, I would say that probably 80% of clients over the last decade have presented with anxiety in some form, whether
Yeah.
they recognize it as that initially,
Wow.
but it arrives in some form. Yeah.
Yeah, 80% as that's a huge number. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Was there anything you wanted to say before we go?
I don't think so. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you for letting me share my piece with you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. Bye, Fran. And bye,
Thanks.
Anxiety Monster.